There is an organization that hangs over all of Battletech, throughout all of its eras. Whether that be the Succession Wars, the Clan Invasion, the Holy Wars of the Blakists, Dark Age, or the new IlClan era. That organization was known as the Star League. Everything that happens after its rise and fall can be traced back to it and the mistakes it made, as well as the romanticized vision of what it was. To many, the Star League resembled peace, Pax Terrana, and the apex of what humanity could accomplish. Today, I am going to be presenting this video as a broad overview as to how the Star League formed and what drove it. Prior to the rise of the Star League, humanity had a mixed history in space in terms of its accomplishments. The Terran Alliance was the first major state to establish control of human space in Battletech, long before there were Battlemechs and during humanity's greatest reach into the stars. It would eventually outgrow its administrative and economic capabilities and would decline, leaving huge swathes of space ungoverned by direct authority of Terra. This would lead to the formation of what would come to be known as the successor states, as people within inhabited space, now lacking central authority from Terra, began to expand their own political influence into the vacuums left behind. These great houses would cement control over much of human space, surrounding the core worlds of what had once been the full reach of the Terran Alliance. In the chaos of its decline, the Terran Alliance would eventually become ungovernable and descend into civil war, and would be overthrown on its capital world by Admiral James McKenna. McKenna would eventually come to head a new government known as the Terran Hegemony as the Director General after seeing the political forces and elites that once ran the Terran Alliance from Earth executed or removed from power by other means. There was a mass reorganization of the state and its political structures, though they were echoes of the system that they had knocked down and replaced in some ways, but altered to the new Director General's designs. Worlds covering much of what had been the Terran Alliance would be reconquered, or threatened back into the political sphere of Terra. McKenna's conquests, however, would eventually hit the borders of these proto-states of what would become the full successor states. This would create an uneasy situation for the Terran Hegemony, where it reached the point of meeting near-peer adversaries. Already, the feudal politics that would come to dominate the inner sphere were developing not only in the proto-successor states, but in the fledgling Terran Hegemony. James McKenna's son, Conrad, was his would-be successor, but through a series of botched campaigns, would be demoted from the military under his father's orders before the Director General would resign and pass away shortly after. Instead of his son, it would be his nephew, Michael Cameron, who would position himself to take over the Terran Hegemony after his uncle's passing. Michael would take the government into a system resembling feudalism, which is often dubbed as neo-feudalism, proposing that this was in fact the best form of government. He would also become the founder of a dynasty that would rule the Terran Hegemony, the mightiest and most advanced state humanity had at the time. The Cameron dynasty would rule the Terran Hegemony for almost 400 years, and would be the only house to be seen as the First Lord of the Star League officially, and would rule over it for almost the entirety of its existence without any dispute. The House of Cameron would become the only family that could become the Director General through legislation, and would go on to dominate their neighbors through diplomacy as the other great houses formed around them. Eventually, conflicts would begin to break out between the other great houses, as they competed for contested territories, colony rights, resources, and their own ambitions. This chaos, and the potential for more chaos, especially with the domestic problems developing in the Terran Hegemony at this time, eventually saw the shift in policy from House Cameron towards keeping the Inner Sphere peaceful, as well as to prevent the collapse of trade, which it was increasingly dependent on, from happening. This would be taken even further as Ian Cameron, a man with endless ambition and a near messiah complex, developed a plan with his inner circle to create a military and economic union with Terra at its head. Eventually, Ian Cameron would sway two of his neighbors, who were fighting at the time in a border conflict, the Free Worlds League and the Capellan Confederation, into joining into the formation of what would become the entity known as the Star League. It would take years to finalize the formation of the League, but eventually the Draconis Combine, Lyran Commonwealth, and Federated Suns would join the pact as well, creating the empire which Ian had dreamt of, effectively re-establishing Terran control over the entirety of human space under the guise of mutual cooperation. Though the latter was true at the time, and though the Star League created peace and prosperity for most of its components at its foundation, rivalries and power struggles would grow with time within the organization, but it would weather those storms for 2 centuries as House Cameron ruled as the first lords of the Star League. The first among equals. This new entity, ruled from Earth, would also create the most consequential military force in the history of mankind, the Star League Defense Force. A military that would be funded by all member states of the Star League, and would see conscription and recruitment from all sectors of the League itself in a unified military force. It would be the ultimate force for keeping the peace, surpassing any one member's military, and over the course of the Star League, the SLDF would only grow in strength until the final cataclysmic battles that would spell the doom of the League across the periphery and across Hegemony space during the fall of the Star League itself. Thank you for joining me here today. If you enjoyed this content, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. In our follow-up video, we will be doing an overview of the Star League once more, looking at its development. With that, everyone, I'll catch you all in the comments section below.